A greedy daughter beat her mother to steal the inheritance. She gave her daughter everything: her youth, her health, her soul, and in return, the daughter gave her a slap that echoed through the years. The bruises faded, but the betrayal rotted slowly in her bones like a cancer of the heart. Hoa had never been a wealthy woman, but she had pride, the kind forged from decades of hard work and sacrifice. She lived in a small, weather-beaten house on the outskirts of town, where the breeze carried the scent of burning straw in the fall and the cicadas sang lullabies in summer. That house, battered by time, meant more to her than any bank vault ever could. It was her past, her struggle, her memories, and it was the last thing she still owned in a world that had taken almost everything else. Her daughter, Mai, hadn't always been cruel. In fact, when Mai was a child, she used to sit on Hoa's lap, fingers tangled in her mother's long gray-streaked hair, asking endless questions about the world. Back then, Hoa thought she had done something right. A kind daughter, smart and spirited, surely that was life's way of saying thank you. But people change. Or maybe money changes them. Mai had married rich. Not just comfortable, but rich enough to scoff at second-hand things and look at her mother's patched alba with a hint of disgust. At first, Hoa didn't mind. She was proud. Her daughter had climbed higher. Isn't that what every mother wants? But then came the distancing, the coldness, the impatience. As if Hoa were some embarrassing relic from a poor past Mai was desperate to erase. It started with subtle suggestions. "Mom, maybe you should move to a smaller place. That old house is falling apart." "I'm fine here," Hoa would reply, eyes still warm, believing her daughter only cared. Then came the offers. "Let me help you sell it. You'll be more comfortable in an apartment near us. Think about your health." When Hoa still refused, things turned darker. "Why are you so stubborn? Are you trying to die in that moldy dump?" She didn't want the money. She didn't trust the motives. It wasn't just a house. It was where her husband died, where she raised Mai on a widow's pension and jars of rice. It was where Mai took her first steps, where Hoa first cried when she could finally afford a proper school uniform. Every cracked tile and rusted nail carried a piece of her soul. But Mai didn't see any of that. She only saw value per square meter. She saw a retirement villa, a beach house. She saw profit, not memories. Then one afternoon, it happened. Mai showed up unannounced, sunglasses perched on her head like a queen, her husband waiting in the car. Her tone was clipped, her eyes sharp. "Sign the papers, Mom. I already have a buyer." Hoa shook her head. "I said no." "Why are you being so selfish?" Mai hissed. "Do you even know what that land is worth now?" "I don't care," Hoa whispered. "I'm not selling." Then the slap came, a crack across the cheek that stung not just her skin, but every memory they'd ever shared. For a moment, there was only silence. The room held its breath. Then Mai stormed out, leaving behind the echo of her fury and a mother who sat, not crying, not shaking, just hollow. The neighbors talked. They always did. But behind their gossip, there was pity and confusion, because no one could understand how a daughter could turn like that. Was it greed? Was it the husband's influence? Or was it something deeper, the rot of ungratefulness that no mother wants to admit might be growing in her child? Hoa didn't say a word about it. She just stopped watering the garden. She stopped folding Mai's old clothes. She left the photo of the two of them, the one from Mai's graduation day, lying face down on the shelf. But memories aren't so easily buried. Each corner of the house whispered her name. The walls still echoed with Mai's childhood laughter. Even the wind seemed to ask, what went wrong? Weeks passed. Mai didn't come back. The house was quieter than ever. Too quiet. The kind of silence that gnaws at your soul when you wake up in the middle of the night and forget for a second that you're completely alone. Hoa's knees hurt more. Her back stiffened. She barely had the strength to cook anymore, and most nights she just sat in her old rattan chair, staring out the broken window. And yet, she didn't regret staying. She regretted raising a daughter who valued land over love. She regretted teaching her everything except how to be kind. One morning, there was a knock. Not Mai. A man in a suit, holding a briefcase. "Madam Hoa, I represent a company interested in acquiring your land for development. They're offering a generous package, plus relocation." She stared at him, then closed the door without a word. Behind her, the TV crackled. On the screen, a documentary played. In Vietnam, The elderly often live alone, neglected. Many suffer quietly in the final years of their life. She didn't need a narrator to tell her that. She was living it. HOA never spoke of the slap again. But something changed after that day. She no longer set a second plate at dinner, just in case Mai dropped by. She stopped dusting the old bookshelf where Mai's childhood trophies sat gathering age. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. Instead, she moved through the house like a ghost still trying to remember what it meant to be alive. She lived, but she no longer existed in the world the way she used to. At night, she'd sit alone, staring at the floor where Mai once crawled as a toddler, where her tiny hands once reached for Hoa's sari-like scarf and giggled when she was lifted into her arms. That memory, so vivid, now felt like a cruel joke. It used to warm her. Now it only stung. The neighbors grew quieter too. They no longer asked about Mai when they passed by. They knew better. Some offered rice or soup. Others simply nodded with sympathy, the kind that comes when people know something is broken beyond repair but can't find words to fix it. One day, Mrs. Lana, a retired nurse from the next street, knocked gently on her door. "I saw Mai at the mall last week," she said, her voice cautious, like she was tiptoeing through a minefield. HOA didn't look up. She looked happy. Her husband just bought a new car. A Lexus. Silence. "They say she might be moving to the city. For good." HOA didn't blink. She just replied with a soft, almost inaudible, "That's good," and then closed the door gently. Inside, she walked past the kitchen, where a single bowl of rice sat cold. Her slippers shuffled slowly over cracked tiles, and the house creaked like it, too, was tired of being alone. Outside, real estate agents kept coming. Letters slid under her door. Offers. Urgency. Final chance. Immediate cash. Life-changing opportunity. She never read them. She just tossed them into the fire pit. Then one afternoon, a woman came, younger, polite, almost apologetic. "Madam HOA," she began, kneeling respectfully. "I'm not here to buy your land. I run a shelter for abandoned elders. Would you be interested in staying with us? It's not charity, just comfort and company." HOA looked at her. For a second, something softened in her eyes. Then she shook her head. "I still have things to do," she said. The woman smiled sadly and left her number on the table. Meanwhile, Mai's life bloomed, at least on the surface. Photos of her vacations dotted her social media. Paris, Tokyo, Da Nang's most luxurious beach resorts. Her friends commented heart emojis, praised her beauty, envied her lifestyle. No one asked about her mother. Mai avoided the subject. She said her mother preferred the countryside, or was too traditional to adapt to modern life. She crafted narratives, smooth and convincing, the way one airbrushes a scar in a portrait. But guilt doesn't die easily. It crept in through quiet moments, the silence of her penthouse, the nights her husband came home late, smelling of whiskey and someone else's perfume. In those moments, she'd lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, hearing the echo of her mother's voice, not in anger, but in pain. She told herself it wasn't wrong, that she had tried, that HOA had been unreasonable, that she did what was necessary. But deep down, a voice whispered, "You struck the hands that fed you." Still, she didn't go back. She sent some money once anonymously. HOA returned it in full. No note, just the cash, folded neatly, sent through the same delivery man who now refused to take any more jobs from Mai. Time passed. Hoa's body weakened. Her arthritis flared. She stopped cooking. Neighbors brought food, but she barely touched it. Some nights, she simply drank water and went to bed hungry. But her mind remained sharp. She read old letters. She kept a diary. She remembered everything, especially what people forget. She began writing. Not long essays or letters, but small things. What her daughter looked like at 3, the taste of her husband's favorite soup, the day Mai first called her mommy with a full mouth of rice. She wrote them on scraps of paper and tucked them under floorboards, behind photos, inside the lining of an old coat. A museum of grief, hidden in plain sight. Then came the day the house was marked for demolition. A city project. Rapid urban development. She had 90 days to vacate. No compensation. No negotiation. She sat with the letter, calm, numb. That night, she packed one bag, a scarf, a photograph, a battered notebook. Then she walked down the street to Mrs. Land's house and said, simply, "I think I'm ready now." At the shelter, life was different. The walls smelled of incense and soup. Old men played Chinese chess under banyan trees. Women with hair like snow shared stories of daughters who never called and sons who only came home to bury them. Hoa didn't speak much. She helped in the kitchen. She sat by the garden. She listened. One day, a journalist came. Young, eager, writing a piece about forgotten elders. He sat beside her and asked, "Do you miss your daughter?" She thought for a while, then said, "I miss who she used to be." He asked, "Would you ever forgive her?" She looked at the sky. The clouds drifted slowly like years passing above her head. "I already did," she whispered. "But that doesn't mean I want her back." Her photo, frail, dignified, appeared in a Sunday magazine under the headline, "Vietnam's Silent Generation, Abandoned but Not Broken." It went viral. The world noticed. I noticed. She saw the photo, recognized the scarf, the shape of the lips, the sadness in the eyes that mirrored her own. She read the article, every word, and for the first time in years, she cried. Not a pretty, tear-down-the-cheek cry. A full-body sob, the kind that shatters something inside and doesn't care who's watching. She called the shelter. No answer. She drove down 2 days later, arriving in a luxury car that didn't belong on such dusty roads. She walked in, clutching a gift bag of bird's nest soup and a bouquet of imported lilies. But when she asked for HOA, a kind nurse shook her head. She passed away last night. The world froze. I collapsed into the nearest chair. The flowers slipped from her fingers. The gift bag landed with a thud no one heard. "She left something for you," the nurse said quietly. "A box. Small. Wooden. Inside, a folded scarf. A photo of them, smiling when I was 8. And a note. You were once my joy. You were once my everything. But love without respect is like fire without warmth. I forgive you, but I cannot give you the past back. Be better than I was." That night, I slept in her mother's old room. No silk sheets. No perfume. Just the scent of age and forgiveness. She read her mother's diary. Every line. She didn't post a tribute. She didn't tell her friends. She just sat at the foot of the bed, mourning a love she'd traded for property value. To be continued. I stayed in the shelter for 3 days. The other elders didn't treat her differently. Some knew who she was. Others didn't care. Here, everyone carried stories of abandonment, betrayal, or simply being forgotten. She was just another broken soul in a place made for healing. Each morning, she swept the courtyard. Each afternoon, she sat by the lotus pond her mother used to tend. She watched as petals bloomed slowly, gently, unaware of pain. She didn't cry anymore. The tears had dried into a quiet, heavy guilt that lived inside her bones. On the 3rd night, she dreamt of her mother. Not as an old woman in a care home, but younger, strong hands, long hair pulled back, humming a lullaby as she washed Mai's clothes in a rusted metal basin. In the dream, Hoa turned and smiled. But behind the smile, there was a question Mai couldn't answer. When she woke up, she knew what she had to do. Mai didn't return to the city. Instead, she went back to the old neighborhood. The house was gone. Bulldozers had already cleared the lot, turning memories into concrete and steel. A development sign stood at the edge, New Horizon Complex Luxury Living Redefined. She stood there for a long time, the wind teasing her hair the way her mother used to. Then she walked away. Down the block, she knocked on Mrs. Land's door. The old woman answered, startled, but not unkind. "I'm sorry," Mai said. "For what?" Mrs. Lawn replied flatly. "For all of it." Mrs. Lawn said nothing for a while. Then she let her in. They sat at the table, drinking hot tea with ginger. "She loved that house," Mrs. Lawn finally said. "And she loved you, even after everything." "I know," Mai whispered. "That's what hurts the most." "You slapped her," Lawn said. "But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was how you never came back." "I was ashamed." "Too late." Mai nodded. No excuses. No defense. Only truth. "I want to do something," she said. "For her. For all of them." Mrs. Lawn raised an eyebrow. "What kind of something?" 6 months later, on a piece of land just outside the city not far from where Hoa's house once stood, construction began. Not luxury condos. Not gated villas. But a center. Small, warm, and quiet. Its name, carved into stone in both English and Vietnamese, read, "The HOA Home for Mothers Who Should Never Be Forgotten." It wasn't a shelter. It wasn't a nursing facility. It was a sanctuary for women left behind, for mothers whose children no longer remembered the way they used to laugh, cook, and love without condition. My sold the Lexus. She sold the penthouse. She ended her marriage, which had long since turned cold. She moved into a modest apartment, took online courses in elder care and nonprofit management, and started writing grant applications at night. Some said she was trying to clear her conscience. Maybe she was. But somewhere along the way, it stopped being about guilt. It started becoming about purpose. She named each room after something from her childhood: the Lotus Room, the Blue Fan Kitchen, the Banana Tree Library, all little pieces of the life she had once taken for granted. She put her mother's scarf in a shadow box by the entrance, along with the last photo they ever took from when Ma was just a child in braids, and her mother still smiled, without weight behind her eyes. Word spread. Old women came, some with canes, some with nothing but a single suitcase and eyes full of loss. They found comfort there not in lavish things, but in attention, in being listened to, in being remembered. Ma greeted every one of them at the door. She didn't tell them her story. She didn't have to. They saw it in her eyes. One night, a woman named Bahan arrived. Wrinkled and sunburnt, she sat quietly by the fireplace, holding a letter she had never sent. "My son lives in America now," she said. "He told me he's busy. He hasn't called in 3 years." Ma sat beside her, gently placing a hand on hers. "He might regret that one day," Ma said softly. Han nodded. "Or maybe he won't. Would you forgive him?" "I already did. It's just I wish he'd come before I forget what he looks like." Ma understood. One morning, as Ma watered the garden, a little girl tugged at her sleeve. She was the granddaughter of one of the residents. "Did you know my grandma used to be a singer?" the girl asked. "No," Ma smiled. "She never told me that." "She said her voice was like silk," the girl whispered proudly. "She sang at weddings." That night, the old woman sang for them, her voice thin but steady, notes of old Vietnamese love songs drifting through the halls like incense. And in that moment, they weren't forgotten. They were celebrated. Years passed. Ma grew older too. Her hair grayed, her face lined. But she was no longer haunted. She was held not by applause or recognition, but by quiet moments that mattered. She taught the staff to remember birthdays, to sit and eat with the residents, to ask about lost recipes and broken dreams. Because that's how you honor someone, not just by feeding them, but by seeing them. The HOA home expanded to 3 centers across the region. Others tried to copy the model. Most failed, because what Ma built couldn't be scaled like a business. It was a tribute, a redemption, a love letter she could never send, written instead in actions. Then, one evening, as dusk painted the sky lavender, Ma felt her chest tighten. She called for help. They rushed her to the hospital. She was diagnosed with late-stage heart failure. The doctor said she might have 6 months. She nodded. "I've had more time than I deserved." Back at the HOA home, she asked to speak with every resident one last time. Not to say goodbye, but to listen. To each story. To every regret. To every joy. She wrote them down, filling a journal with names, dates, dreams. At the end, she added, "You are not forgotten. You are not burdens. You are the roots of everything we know. I see you. I honor you. I failed my mother once. I will not fail you." She passed quietly, 3 weeks later, on the same date her mother had died years before. The staff held a small ceremony. No flowers, just candles, and her mother's scarf, placed gently over her chest. A new wing was built in her memory. They called it the Daughter's Wing for those who came back. And in the lobby hung a plaque. She returned too late to say sorry, but not too late to make it matter. The end.